So how did I come out to California?
Yeah.
Why don't you ask me that?
Yeah, so how did you come out to California?
Well, I was bouncing around Maine and Boston in 1969 and taking a lot of drugs and dealing some, small-time stuff. And at some point, I just said, I got to get away from here. I had 2 days, I was fighting the draft, and then I had 2 days, one of them I almost drowned in one of the most polluted rivers in Maine, the Androscoggin. And then the next day I went through the stone wall at 70 miles an hour.
The very next day.
And the very next day. And I was with the same 2 guys. And I just kind of, it's like something's telling me to leave here. So I waited until, I was feeling better. I tore up a toe. So I waited and then took off one day hitchhiking for New York. I was standing at the end of the Maine Turnpike and some pretty girl picked me up. She wasn't going to New York, but she was going to Philadelphia. You can come to Philadelphia with me if you want, sure. And I stayed there for about a month. And then one night I'm loaded on speed and there were some people over and they said, oh, we're leaving now. And I said, oh, where are you going? They said, Chicago. And I said, can I come? And they said, sure. So I went to Chicago, and by that time, I didn't stay. I stayed maybe about a day, 2 days, and I had friends in Lincoln, Nebraska, because I went to school in western Nebraska, so I went to see Grady and Lincoln, and then I figured, well, I'm halfway to California, so I might as well go to California.
Yeah, why not, huh?
And yeah, so I stuck out my thumb and started hitchhiking. And I got to San Francisco. I had some friends, Richard and Gwen Schilling there. And I got out of the car in San Francisco and just in the middle of June and just froze my butt off. And that's my big memory of it. And actually, I guess it's probably in July because I spent the 4th of July in a small town in Nebraska. But so anyhow, I ended up in San Francisco. And that's when I stopped doing speed. It's one of the 2 things that I've actually quit in my life, the other one being tobacco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah. So that's how I ended up in California, and I just stayed. I mean, the first day I ended up in Berkeley, I just sat on Telegraph Avenue all day, and it's like, whoa, this place is wild. And it's just like culture shock, and yeah, I stayed. And then...
I guess those were the days to actually be in the Berkeley area,
Yeah, and there's also the days when you could hitchhike easily.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. That was my mode of travel. And you could do that then for probably about another, that was 69, maybe about another 4 or 5 years. And then that was pretty much the end of that. So I really wanted to get into music or the arts somehow. I had been into rock and roll since they invented it, since Little Richard invented it in '55. I had an older sister who was in high school, and she got me into it. And so I just kind of, I had no idea how to go about it. Didn't play an instrument. And then one day I met Skip Spence, and Skip was friendly to me, and he gave me his phone number and said give him a call sometime after 11. And we got to be friends.
He's a cool guy.
Huh?
Really cool guy.
Oh, Skip Spence is one of the great geniuses of our time. And underrated.
Very underrated. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he had personal problems that kind of obscured his genius. Well, he didn't really. It's just he was so hard to deal with on a personal level. And that was a lot of it then. And so anyhow, but Skip, I hung around with him and I just learned a lot just hanging around with him because he talked to me about, one of the things he said was he stressed with the arts one day he said to me, Paul, you know who made Eric Clapton? I says, no, I have no idea. He says, John Mayall made Eric Clapton because he made him sit and play for 6 hours every day. And he stressed the value of doing that every day. And other people who I found that stressed that same value were Eugene Delacroix, Vincent van Gogh, and all of those people stressed the value of doing it. You got to do it every day, even if it's it's better to fail 1,000 times than not to try.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Skip did that, and then one day we were all living at the Chateau Liberté, the Danny Barnett's van in the Redwood Grove there, and Skip and I had a fight, and he told me that you're selling out, and what do you mean, Skip? Don't know. What do you mean, Skip? He says, go figure it out on your own. So I went hitchhiking up in the Pacific Northwest, and long story short, I became a painter.
Yeah, yeah.
I had painted, the first thing I did was a drawing of Little Richard one night, and I showed it to him the next day, and, oh, Paul, can I have that? Yeah, thank you, Richard. And that was something the king of rock and roll likes my painting, my drawing,
Oh, so you actually gave Little Richard himself your drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's too cool.
Yeah.
That is too cool, and he liked it.
He liked it. At least he said he did. That was all I cared about.
That's enough, right?
Yeah. It's like the king of rock and roll likes my drawing. And it was a couple years before I actually decided to become a painter after that. It's probably about 73 was the summer I went hitchhiking. It was the summer of Watergate when I went hitchhiking up in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, okay.
And then my friend Pat Hennigan let me sleep on his couch for a year, and without paying rent. And while he did the graveyard shift at a radio station in Santa Barbara. Okay. And I practiced drawing during that whole time. I didn't paint, which is something Vincent told me I should do, because nobody else does that, and it really shows in the work, because the work, you can see the superficiality of the work because these people don't know anything about tonal values. And, so I did that, and then, I just moved to Boston and copied the paintings of the Museum of Fine Arts that I liked there. And talked to one of the curators whenever I had the opportunity, a lady named Alex Murphy. And I painted every day. And I went through a period of about a year where Vincent told me, it's like, in his letters, he said to, mix your colors together and, do dark, paint dark. Because that's where you're going to find your tonal values. And I painted for about every day for about 2 years, where I didn't paint a single picture I liked, and that's hard. Yeah. And then it's like when I got to Boston, the colors started to thaw. The curator of paintings there, John Walsh, used to come up and talk to me in the galleries, and he'd point out, your picture's a lot darker than that, and I'd say, yeah, I know. But it's like I continued to do it, and eventually when I got back to Santa Barbara, I knew all this color theory, and then I was just assaulted with all of these gorgeous flower gardens there, and that's where I really learned how to color, was when I went back to Santa Barbara after Boston. Wow. Yeah, and I painted a lot of flower gardens, all the color theory that I learned, and my colors were strong because of the fact that I had painted dark. It's like I look at people now, and there's hardly any color in their work, and they are very successful at it as far as selling. Yeah. I never really tried to sell my work because that's one of the reasons why I got into painting as opposed to music, was so that I could just paint and create my art without anyone else having to participate in it. The only participation I needed from outside was selling, and I was never any good at selling. So I didn't. I got myself a real cushy radio gig doing classical music in Santa Barbara for 22 years.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and I worked weekend nights, Saturday and Sunday, from 4 to midnight for 22 years, and that supported me.
Wow.
And then I was able to arrange my life so that I painted every day. And I painted like 7 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, about 320 days a year, and did that for 40 years. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick now for the first time in my 66 years, so I don't, you know, it's like my priorities now have shifted a little bit to getting my website, paulb.com.
Yeah.
You know, my new website, paulb.com, my priorities have shifted to getting all the pictures looking like the new format. And then, you know, I'm still painting a lot, most every day. But it's like this week I had a friend of mine up from Sacramento, and I haven't painted, and then I had to get blood, and I haven't, and then you guys are here, so we're going up the mountain,
right.
And I haven't done any painting this week, but that's okay. It's like, you know, I've got over 2,000 paintings now.
That's
it's
really
like
neat.
I don't really see where my legacy is going to be determined on whether I have 2,025 or 2,055. You know, it's like whatever legacy I leave, you know, I'm leaving regardless of whether I do any more, but I do it. And
right.
yeah, it's like I'm focusing more on getting the website and getting the stuff out there now for somebody hopefully will come along and sell it for me. So that's what I'm working on right now.
All right. Yeah, I certainly hope everything clicks, you know, and goes totally favorable in every respect. But you know, I've visited your website numerous times from years ago on up to you know, just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And it's impressive, you know, how many beautiful paintings are just all over that thing. Plus,
I have about 700 paintings on the website.
That's pretty good.
And you know, I look at the stuff that's not on there, and I'm like, you know, God, it's like, you know, I could do 3 times as many as this, you know. And none of the quality would suffer at all.
Yeah.
And I've still got all that stuff, that dark on dark stuff that I did during the 2 years that I painted every day and didn't paint anything I liked, just so I could have, you know, at some point, like Vincent, a museum where, you know, you could trace how I learned and, you know, the various stages I went through from, you know, painting every day when I didn't have anything that I liked. Obviously, there wouldn't be many of those, but I've got them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really focused on all my life, was to save paintings from every period. I've also got a journal that I've been keeping since 1973, and I've got 72 volumes of it now, where I learned how to paint.
That's good.
Yeah, the Boston ones are very instructive to anyone, you know, somebody who wants to paint, learn how to do that.
So essentially then you've also done your own recording of your own methodology as well.
Yeah.
And that's excellent. I mean, that's a good legacy to leave, you know.
Well, also, one of the things that Vincent said was, be a master of one thing and other things will follow.
Yeah.
So I did my classical music show on KBB for 22 years. During that time, the pay in radio, the saying is that in radio, the pay sucks, but you get a lot of free stuff. And I got a lot of free stuff. I got ballet tickets, San Francisco Opera tickets, LA Opera tickets, and, you know, Shakespeare Festival and all of this. I've seen and reviewed every major ballet company in the world, and I've seen and reviewed all 38 Shakespeare plays, including Two Noble Kinsmen, which is not part of the repertoire. And I've also seen all of the operas I wanted to see. To me, one of the best things about the breakup of the Soviet Union were the cultural exchanges that were taking place then. And San Francisco Opera was right at the forefront of that, along with the Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg. Valery Gergiev, who's the artistic director at Mariinsky, and I think he's the associate artistic director at the Met now. But he wasn't the star, the sought-after star then, that he is now. So it's like his big venue in the United States was San Francisco Opera.
Okay.
And Ann and I went to see my longtime significant other and beloved Ann Prebis. She and I went to see all that stuff. And when we go to San Francisco, we'd usually stay in San Jose.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like we'd talk about what we had just seen on the way home, on the way back to the motel, and then I'd write my review. So she was very involved in that. But, you know, it's like, and, you know, a big part of that. So, I mean, you know, I've done a lot of stuff other than just painting, too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's
And that stuff's all on my website, too.
Right.
Along with most of my journal. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally awesome. Yeah. It was, well, when we first met, you and I and Ann first got together, I guess in summer of '99, somewhere in there, and
Because it was after Skip died.
it was after Skip died.
Yeah.
And so it was, yeah, a few months after that. And I know you would come back and forth, and we would visit whenever you were between Santa Barbara and San Francisco, when you were checking out the operas and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. You know, that was really neat.
Yeah.
A lot of good memories.